How to build Kingdom on the cheap.
Might as well get these plants done.
You buy lots of junk. You buy junk, that's what you do. And we use all the junk we can find and turn it into love.
And you hang around in junkyards too.
We hang around in junkyards.
Make friends with junkards.
Make friends with junkards. We just do what we can, what we can find. What we're doing here, we're going to use all these pallets as the infrastructure for the hothouse and the shelving systems. And we've got steel from old play toys we're going to use for shelving systems, which are all just down there. We've got aluminium stuff we're going to use for shelving. You'll see all this as we make it.
How much did those poles cost?
Everything we've got, everything you're seeing here would have been, including all the other stuff, would be under $150.
Under $150.
Now, a few years ago, when life was normal, all this would have been free. But in terms on the haggling on the cheap side of this system that we have to live in at the moment, we're compromised by it was under $150, and when you include petrol and all the journey back into it from the junkyard.
And the man's sweat.
The man's sweat and all that. And we need to get some bolts and bits and pieces, nails and stuff, which we probably already got, all that stuff. And we're going to start erecting a shelving system for all because this is all temporary here.
Why have we got all these plants up here in boxes and pots instead of in the ground?
We're feeling that we're going to be moving from here. This is a temporary situation to move to a more permanent place, and we don't want to sort of spend all the hours building huge gardens in the ground here and then have the difficulty having to relocate that or leave most of it behind. So what we're doing, we're using polystyrene boxes and plastic pots, whatever else we can. We're making up soil mixes, with our compost and whatever food waste we can, gather with an extra set of bags of soil that we're picking up, potting mix and stuff. And everything we're doing is going to be done in polystyrene boxes. This is all part of our recycling plan.
Shall we go have a look at those?
Yeah, go and have a look at them. And then we've got a recycled wife up here. She's really good at recycling. I recycle her every day in the garden. Andy is shooting the camera. He's recycled. We recycle everyone, mate. No one comes in love like that being recycled. So
we're all damaged, that's for sure.
We're all damaged, man. We're all compromised. So this is the beginning of the food forest. But it might take 10-15 years to see the evidence of the food forest, Sandy. Oh, excuse me.
Can you help her?
This is Xanthi. This is she's carrying.
She's the best little helper.
She's a real helper. This is part of the beginnings of the food forest. You can see it in here. We have seeds in here. It comes from my mother's back garden, actually. She has all these wild weeds that we use for green smoothies and.
Kingdom on the cheap, take 2. So, you were explaining the different types of plants we have.
I'm using natural fluoride and biodegradable detergents.
Got some nice chlorine in there too, I think.
There's natural fungus and mould in this water, and it all comes from the system. They're very kind and caring about us. So I feed the plants with this every day. It's really important that you do it at least once a day. And you should shower yourself in it as well, and even have a bath at least a couple of times a day. That would be worthwhile. The fluoride's good for you, as you know.
Yeah, of course. The rats love it.
Oh, they do. Of course they love it. You won't go to sleep. You won't even know it. You'll think you're still awake.
Spot on.
And yeah. So we're using the main water system here because we don't have water tanks. We're actually in a rented house. This is the house.
Most people don't realise how compromised this situation is, do they?
Yeah, we didn't. Well, this is where we woke up. 2005 we moved here, November 2005 in East Barrel in this house, and it was here that all the awakening of love work occurred, and where Fee and I busted our guts working those hours, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, building Love Life website, and contemplating information that wasn't found in books, and there's no one out there to tell us about it, and we sort of woke up and we realised that we were so compromised that we needed to have a community, be part of a community so we could start growing food, because we can't trust the system. I mean, there's only 2 weeks food supply in the country at any given moment now.
Yeah, I remember that.
Happens, from the side of fuel or the Freemasons decide they want to pull the plug faster with the monetary system, or if they want to create civil war, they can actually do it. They've got the ability to manipulate enough people to make that happen pretty quick. So what we're thinking of is getting enough food growing now, because we don't trust anymore that they care about us enough. So yeah.
So some people might think, well, if you hate the system so much, why don't you, go up north or go somewhere cheaper and, get away from all the harm?
Well,
what would you say to that?
I don't see that as a remedy, Andy, because they've got technology. Look at that guy, that Victorian minister that went missing a few years ago up in the mountains.
What was his name again?
I forgot his name.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember his name, but there's a links on the website. Maybe I can find the link and I'll whack it on the video here. And they couldn't find him, and so they've actually sent a special plane. We found him pretty quick. A lot of questions were asked to the federal police as to what this plane was. How did they find him so quick? And it's obviously something to do with DNA, heat register, some kind of technology basically showing that you can't hide from these people. There's nowhere to go. And because we're all responsible for all the damage we've done, we've destroyed everything while we were asleep, and now waking up. What's the point of running away from all the mess we've caused? We might as well get involved in the very areas we've been wrecking and start making changes.
Right, well, if you run away from it, who else is going to fix it?
Exactly. So it's about taking responsibility. So what's the point of going into pristine environments and moving there when we might as well turn all these lands that have been pasteurised and through agriculture and all the destruction that we've done to all these lands and the suburban worlds that we're living in? Why don't we start rechanging them from there? So that's what we're doing. We're trying to set the example that there's no point running away. All we need is each other. And start taking responsibility to start caring for each other again.
And we stress that, don't we? We need the actual community to be educated before we can actually get this thing off the ground.
Exactly. Because we've got to get past the me, my money, my piece of land. It's mine, I own it, it's mine, you can't have it. We've got to get past all that into ours and sharing, and we're all stewards and custodians and caretakers, and lies the team effort. That's what it's all about. So I think it's Hannah and Andy are now living with us, and I guess we should go back to Displace. See this green stuff down here? This is plastic stuff they use for growing seedlings and little trees they plant, and it's all recycled rubbish, but we're going to use it to make the walls for the hothouse. All that cost us $10, and all the pallets, we're going to use it for the framing around the outside of the benches and walls that we're going to make.
How many pallets are there all up?
Now there's about 22 or 23. We're probably going to get a few more just for spare parts. And we'll do some videos, Andy? We'll do some videos on how we're going to put all this together to show that we can actually build a shelving system to raise off the ground all the polystyrene boxes to minimise the attack from the snails and slugs, which are abundant here. We have a very healthy supply of snails and slugs and other things that love nature. So instead of trying to mess with them and hitting them with horrible pesticides and that which affects our children running around the garden, we're going to try and raise them up and do something around the legs to stop them getting up and into the food. And then we're going to start planning to keep the majority of the birds out of the food as well. And so now look, if you show them the garden, come up here and show them the garden here. This is the wonderful suburban backyard gardens we have now.
I can only go so far because of my cord.
Okay. Well, how about we...
but I've got a good shot.
We can do another shot and we'll come back up here and do it later. Actually, I've got to go water these fellas down here, Andy, while we're at this. Just give this a green light water. Most of these seeds that come from my mother's garden. My mother actually has a mini food forest near a beach called Bronte. She lives actually in Waverley on the border of Bronte. And I never really appreciated this about my mother, but she's only about 5'1", 5'2", and she's got fig trees growing in this little tiny garden. She's got old Hills Horse clotheslines, and she's got other things, contraptions that she's found, and she's got chilies growing up through the Hills Hoist line. She's got cucumbers going through the Hills Hoist line, and up into the fig trees. Fiona went up there with my mother, and my mother's in her late 70s, early 80s now, and she's actually still climbing up like 30, 40 feet up these fig trees to put a little sack around every fig. The amazing thing, Fiona went up there and she's finding cucumbers up there and pumpkins growing up there, and there's this whole intermeshing world of food growing, and I'm thinking, this is my mother been doing this for 30 years. I've been so asleep, totally disrespectful to what my mother's been doing. And these Greek Cypriot women that come out here, and other ethnic women, have got all the skills and knowledge to get a food forest growing, and with compatible planting, without having to sit there and read books. She's read no books. It's just come from her brain and instinct. And
you got to think how the system, you know, and all its fiction comes across to them. You got to think it must be so clear to a lot of those like Greek Cypriots and
Yes.
you know, European sort of peasant types who have come in with all the knowledge of the land and all the knowledge on how to actually co-create with it. You got to think that they must be baffled, you know, to think.
you know what? They're worth more than all the gold and silver in the world.
Oh,
These people.
I would agree.
We need to cherish them and bottle them and bring them on the land and get them busy with the rest of us and growing gardens and getting into food and, you know, and do all the things they love. Instead of them being slaves, surviving in the system, worrying about their mortgages and worrying about keeping their homes and having to pay land tax and worrying about having to protect their children's future by protecting the assets of all the work they've done for the last 30 years on this land since they've immigrated here. But so many of these people are the true value. They are the real labourers of the land, amongst all the others who've been living here all this time, not disregarding the traditional man on the land who was here for a very, very long time, who has been so severely decimated and ignored and ridiculed and abused by us, by our ancestors and all the invaders who came on these lands. We've got to make right all these things that we've been made wrong. So, again, Kindom's about this, isn't it? You know, it's about all of us together. We don't need religion. We don't need cults and sects. We don't need to have any rules and regulation. It's just simply love. How can I help you today? If we think like, what can we do today for our community, for our tribe? And we're all thinking like that. And we're all doing it like that. And there's no more me, I, mine in this. We've got ourselves paradise. We've solved all our problems. But can we get past that? The answer is yes, if we still want to be alive. If we don't, we're going to kill each other and we're going to wipe out and there won't be much of us left. If any, we'll be lucky.
Are you talking like there's wars going on? You're talking like
there's no wars.
You know, there's...
Come on. We live in paradise here. You know? Everything's wonderful. It's a great place. I'm just going to go turn the water off. We're moving a lot of pots. We're actually slaves at the moment to this process temporarily because of the excessive snails and slugs which we're unwilling to kill, and we're learning how to live with these guys. We have to learn to minimise collateral damage to the snails and slugs, and particularly all the food we're trying to grow. So hence why we're going to create shelving systems and raise them above the ground and then treat the legs in a natural way, which we're still working out how to do that, to stop the snails and slugs climbing up and into all the seedlings that you can see over here. We've got basically everything you can possibly buy in a shop we're going to have growing here. And you may see over the next few weeks.
And what have we done with that kale that you got in your hand there? How do we get that kale growing?
That kale, well, that was just the bottom stump of a piece of kale. It was just cleaned up a bit and replanted the pot, and we're getting a whole new bunch of kale coming out.
We've done that with...
carrots, parsnips. We're doing it with, well, Andy, well, you know.
Celery.
Celery. Yeah, we're recycling.
Cabbage.
Cabbage. Just about everything.
Lettuce.
Everything you can do like that, we're actually doing it. While we're getting more seeds, and we're actually letting some things go to seeds. By the way, all of you out there who want to help this, you're welcome to come and bring some labour into this, because this is not just for us, this is for the growing community that we're part of, that you want to be part of. If you want to throw fictional dollars or manpower, come and give us a hand. We've got this hothouse to build. It's going to be a massive hothouse in this garden. We'll probably take the camera around the other side in a minute. You can actually see where we're going to build all this over the next week or two. So come down and give us a hand, you know. Nothing's stopping you. This is going to be your food. When the system starts to hit hard, you're going to need food. You won't be able to go to the private corporations and continue sucking on their nipples, you know. And if they do change it to a cash as well,
they're big nipples though.
They're pretty big nipples, and they may ask you to take some kind of iris scan or a DNA register or a microchip or something,
a sperm
before
sample.
you can even walk into their shops or buy their petrol or anything. And that's all going to come pretty quick, you know. The New World Order is all good for us, isn't it? You know, we all know that. So we temporarily do this, don't we? We've noticed we've had quite a few plants that we've been planting. Hannah, Andy's partner, has been making little caps out of whatever plastic we find to protect kale and cabbages that have been butchered by the snails and slugs, and we take them away from them at night by putting them up here. You know, wherever we can.
So what we're trying to do is, at the moment, while we're living so compromised within the system, and there is so much harm being done. And a reason for talking about the pristine environments and why we don't run away to them at the moment is because simply if we were to run into one of those pristine environments at the moment, with what we know, we just decimate it, just like we've decimated the land around us here in, you know, East Bowral, or, you know, where I'm from in Berwick or Cranbourne, or where anybody else is from, you know, where in Victoria, sorry, you know. And basically, if we don't learn how to live with everything now while we're compromised, then we're never going to be able to stop the harm being done and actually live in paradise and, you know, take care of each other within proper community style.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no time like now to start doing it, because, you know, this is a consequence. It's not about fear. It's just simply, we actually can't trust the people behind the system to actually take our best interests at hand. They really do not take best interests at hand with us. We've learnt that by testing the State Debt Recovery Office and the way we challenged the courts and the things we went through.
Have you found anybody to take responsibility for anything within the system?
The Queen's out here now. She still hasn't contacted us to say I'm sorry for everything that I've been part of. We've written to her. You know, basically there's no one in the system, no matter how far you go up the ladder, no one will come forth to take full liability. No one. We're all operating under limited liability. So the power's in our hands to take responsibility for everything we think, feel and do. So in the moment is our power. So Andy and I, we decided we're going to become part of a tribe. Fiona, Hannah, here's Hannah. Hello to Hannah. Say hello to Hannah.
Hi.
Hannah. Anna's another recycled woman we use for Kingdom.
Damaged goods.
Damaged goods being recycled. Andy's damaged goods, I'm damaged goods. You know, we're all being recycled as we recycle everything else, and out of all this will come the beauty of Kingdom. I'm very excited about it.
Which we have the very basis of right now within our small suburban jungle.
Exactly.
Portable jungle.
We're creating a portable jungle. We just cannot wait to get these shelving systems up and running outside. And because the frost will start coming around April, May, so if we're still living here, because we're still keen to get land, and we're not going to, at this stage, we don't want to go to war with the Crown and all the people behind the system. We just go and take a piece of land and just do it, because we all have this natural inheritance for a piece of land to care for. As we say in our work, what are we without a piece of land to care for? We become slaves, being ruled by other people who are going to tell us how to think and feel, by whatever means, whether it's through religion or whether it's through some occult astrology or methods of esoterics, or whether it's through a political process. We're still slaves. I'm not committed to being a slave anymore. I don't need them to be my nannies. So even though I've pulled out of the system,
Should be right, mate. Come on.
yeah, I know, but you know, I've given up my driver's license. I've given up. I have no registrations. I've got no Medicare. I have nothing. You know, it's been like this. It's unfolded since 2006 when I pulled out. I live by the gifts. Well, everyone else, including you and Hannah and others, everyone's been supporting, putting gifts into this to help me do what I'm doing, so that I can turn around and help everyone else. So eventually, we're going to have more of us who've got to live like this. We're actually pulling out of the system, and together, we're taking responsibility for everything we think, feel and do.
So let's say, for instance, you know, everybody is aware at the moment there's a big hoo-ha about Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Melbourne, Occupy Sydney, things like that, in order to remove the capitalist system into maybe, let's say, a resource-based society or a more socialist-based system or something like that. But wouldn't they all still operate under the system of commerce? Wouldn't they all still be a system of man-made intention? You know, could you explain more deeply about maybe?
Well, we suspect that the New World Order, which is this remedy, it will be similar to the Star Trek Federation kind of world where there's no more any money, and all debts will be waived. These guys, the good guys that will come out of this Freemasonic world, they're going to give you the most wonderful gift, and everyone's going to jump for it because it's going to be so exciting. All debts will be wiped out. All right, all the issues, all the wars will all be stopped. They're all responsible for everything. They also have the power to stop it all, because we give them that power still. What we've got to watch out for here is that we don't fall for another system to be ruled by under the guise of this feel-good situation. So it will come across like it's Christian-like. It's going to come across like we've got this relationship to a cosmic galactic world, and that we're cared for by all these wonderful saviours who are going to come to rescue us, by whatever means they may be. But the point is that each of us should be taking full responsibility for everything we think, feel and do. If we do that, we do not need their remedy.
So what would you say to people then that might say, well, you know, it's a better system, can't we start with that? Isn't that a stepping stone into getting out of it?
You can't have a system without being a slave. It's impossible. All man-made systems require slaves and rulers. Is that what you want? If you want to support that, you continue this problem we're having, and we'll never ever break the spell that's been ruling us for all this time.
So how does a system then, you know, why is everybody a slave in the system?
They've given up their uniqueness because they've been brainwashed into the molds that they have to perform in their roles within the system that they're under.
If everybody was unique, wouldn't then, you know, we all just be disjointed and disconnected and...
Well, it's nature that binds us all together. It's already what nature binds everything together. It's nature that binds us all together as well. It's nature that provides us with a uniqueness, because nature is the living creator, and all the information living creator already is in nature. Our children just need to be brought up by nature. Nature is not the nature they taught us at school. Nature is not the abominations they taught us from the dark ages that there were all these little creepy crawly things that came out of the water and suddenly grew into these little other things that suddenly become the apes that became into man, and all this evolution. All this is just garbage. None of that happened. I mean, they found a tree, a fossilized tree, through all the soil stratas that's supposedly supposed to represent 6 million years or something like that. Right? One tree.
And what was the... Yeah.
It just shows that carbon dating is a lot of garbage. As we say in my work, all science-based is just rubbish. You can just throw it all in the bin. The whole idea of having science is to have you in the system. If there was no system, you would have no science. There's no need for it. Because we already got the natural consciousness of us as man living with nature. That already is living science, if you want to call it that. So any man-made system that makes us represent constructs, man-made constructs, turns us into slaves.
And why do you think, although this new system might have its benefits, or people might see it having benefits because of debts being wiped and having a cashless system, but can you explain why you think this new system, why we really don't want this new system, why it's going to have more control
Because
over
you've got
us?
to have other men and women still telling you how to think and feel, and you're going to be ruled by a tiny few. No man is master of another man. All men are equal.
What about in a resource-based society or something like that, where, you know, technology is supposedly the commander of...
Well, technology is destruction to nature, which is harm to us. Do you want to live in a world like that? Do you want to take responsibility for all the harm? Who's going to come forward and take responsibility for every living thing that we're killing and turn into something dead? Who's going to come forward and take that responsibility?
So how do you prove then that, you know, a mountain or something like that is living, or... You know, a lot of people would say that they're just dead materials.
Well, look for the tribes who used to live in it, and look what we've done to those mountains we've decimated, and see what's remaining after we've destroyed it all. Let's find out what was living there before. That's pretty obvious, you know. Look at all the destruction and decay that we've caused everywhere. Nuclear bombs that we've dropped, and nuclear waste, radiation, you know, chemicals that we've been spraying. Look at all the decimation of which was now from all the trees we've ripped out, where we have salinity issues now. The rivers and the way we've destroyed the rivers. This is agriculture. This is consumerism. This is all to do with the system of farming, which is nonsense. We don't need that system. We just need to each all learn to co-create on a piece of land and become raw food, living food eaters again, which is what we used to be.
And what is co-creating?
Co-creating is where we work together as a team. That what I do is a benefit to everybody else. Everything I do does not harm to anyone. So what we're so compromised at the moment.
And if you do harm to someone, then ultimately...
It's harm to me.
It's harm to you.
And my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I do affects another man and woman on the other side, across the other side of Earth, no matter where it is. I'm not saying Earth's round, but wherever it is, we're going to affect them as well. We are so connected. So it just comes back to taking full responsibility.
Would you say we are one?
No. We're whole.
Whole. How could you explain that concept?
Because oneness pertains to finite. It means it puts you into some kind of sameness mold. You know, we're same kind of thinking, same kind of philosophy.
That we would be
belief.
slaves to nature or something like that.
We're unique already. We're already gifted with the uniqueness just by being man in nature. And we each form our natural relationship by allowing us to integrate with nature. Because look at the sensations of nature in all its forms. It's unlimited. From every insect, from every flower, from every plant, every tree, every day with the way the clouds shape different forms, the sunlight, the birds and all the different kind of birds, and the way the wind moves, and the way the water moves, and the rain. There is so much uniqueness in the moment by moment that we're already taken care of. We don't have to jump 10 foot across the room to grab our next breath. Why should we have to concern about the very thing that's already been taken care of? We're already gifted with that uniqueness. All we need to do is start living as man and start being the gift of life. All we have to do is create gifts that benefit everyone else, which benefits the dream and does no harm. That's all we have to do.
So how is a system then, if man is part of nature, how is a system then ever, so to speak, man-made? You know, what separates it then from being a natural creation or an initial co-creation?
Because
of
we're
life?
now in the image of another man's thought. Usually that's occurred by invasion, where a tribe has been conquered by another tribe, or in this case the British Empire that invaded all the supposed new lands with all the other royal families and royal houses of Europe since the Norman conquest, which is in their recorded books around 1000s, 1100s.
There was no capitalism then, was there?
It was a different kind of power and control system.
That's right.
You know, it doesn't matter what titles we're going to give to them, it's still about power and control for the tiny few. It's always been like that in the system, wherever that system has performed.
Exactly.
But the point I'm getting at is that when you go back to looking at the British Empire, which were these Normans, which were Vikings that invaded the lands we now call Britain, they actually caused genocide on those lands, decimated all the original man on the land there. The man on the land now that we now call the British are not British by natural heritage on those lands. These are all invaders that moved on these lands, and the migrants that moved on those lands since those invaders conquered those lands. These people, since they invaded what we now call Britain, then planned to conquer the rest of all the supposed new lands across Earth, which were never new lands. They knew about them all. And so what they did, they sent their people in. This is what I suspect they do, because you can see the way these people think, and you can see the way they keep doing it. The same tactics are used over and over again. But they sent reconnaissance in. They sent their missionaries, their scientists, their botanists to mix in with the tribes. They might have spent 200 or 300 years recording and documenting everything about their tongues, the way they spoke, the way they lived. And then once they documented it and had everything in place, they sent their invading ships in to decimate the tribes. And because they knew the history, the true history of the tribes, then they rewrote the history through their read and write alphabet languages. And then brainwashed all those that conquered the children and turned them into the version of the history that the conquerors had provided. Because remember, all history is recorded by the conquerors, you know. It's not like as if the
Anybody in Australia knows that's untrue.
well, you know, yeah, of course.
All of history...
All victors write the history.
That's right, yeah, history is written by the victors. Yeah,
So we
I
can't
agree.
trust the history because the tiny few, and these people who are behind the Freemasonic world, is the agenda of this idea that they're going to conquer the whole of Earth and rule it, which was the plan made by their founding fathers. Started this rubbish long ago.
Well, these people are also just victims of their conditioning.
Exactly, they're all babies who've been compromised, and you've
They
got to
don't know
forgive
any
them.
better.
They don't know any better either. They weren't given full disclosure to become the bastards they've grown up to become. You know, the evil that they're doing. They were babies as well. If they were given full disclosures while they're innocent children, they comprehended the significance. I would doubt that any of them would continue on that path. They wouldn't do it. Their conscience would take the better of them. But through pounding and brainwashing, we turn them into these drones who become the generals of the armies, of the politicians, and the heads of all the private corporations, and those who are in the royal families, and etc. On it goes. All these people compromise. The point I'm getting at, going back to this thing about the British Empire, though, is that after they prepared the land in their image, they receded. That supposedly on the surface, the British Empire receded from the lands. Now, when we talk about the French invasion, the Spanish invasion, the Portuguese invasion, it's all one and the same people. Doesn't matter what's going on. Their history, they rewrote all the history. And they twisted everything to give the idea that there's wars amongst them and all that, but really there's still one agenda going on. And what they did, they went from an overt position, you know, where we're not going to have everyone on the street with guns and everyone's under the force of this military might. They then put in place a covert system which could only operate under the brainwashing of the education system that they provided us all. So we're actually still conquered. Our brains are conquered and we're ruled by them under an overt way. So the Freemasonic world is the infrastructure that upholds the system, that gives them all their power.
The psychological
The
infrastructure.
psychological infrastructure, and then out of that comes all the physical infrastructure, because we're also dumbed down and stupid, giving our energy to this world that they've created, which has come out of the real world, which we have to destroy to create it. You know, it's an artificial one that we superimposed over the real one. So when people ask him, well, don't you think that some kind of new ecological system we can live by, something that's social beneficial, to me it's all garbage. You can't. No man has a natural inheritance to rule another man. I should not be brought under the image of how you think and feel. Neither should you be under my image and the force of my character. What we got to do is honour our uniqueness and allow us to have a piece of land each that we care for. And there's more than enough across Earth for far beyond the populations we've got today. The greed and selfishness is the issue here. It's got nothing to do about overpopulation. If we all return to being living food eaters, raw food eaters, we resolve more than 98% of all our problems literally overnight. And we'll solve all our issues with disease and sickness. We'll cure all our problems.
And raw food without eating meat as well.
Yeah, we stop killing meat because all the heavy density of meat is what keeps us way down. When you're eating raw food...
And we're not using all that land to propagate for industry.
Exactly,
industry
and
for all of the
destroying all the lands.
death of all the animals.
No animal ever gave its permission to be killed and eaten. I've confronted tribal people about that.
All of the wheat and the soy and everything, that majority of all of that goes to animals.
We don't We don't need to live by the heavy.
What was the response from the tribal people that you interviewed?
Many of them. They didn't know what to answer when I said to them, "You bring forward an animal to back your claim that they actually gave you permission to kill and eat them."
Were they claiming in the first place?
Well, they do it anyway. They think that they have some natural inheritance to do that, to kill an animal. So I've confronted them about it.
Oh, like the Bible tells us, man has dominion.
Yes, exactly. It's the same nonsense. It's rubbish. Bring forward. I asked him, why the hunt? Why the boomerangs and spears? And why the guns and traps and all that? If they truly want to give their life to you willingly, why don't they just come before you and just lay down and let you take their life? Why do you have to hunt and chase them? Because the reason is because we're not supposed to eat them. They've got a job to do in the dream of life. But we can only realise that through sense. We can't do it through nonsense, which is the brainwashing that's been passed down through our ancestors and our parents who have been brainwashed into the nonsense.
And the brainwashing is the psychological warfare that we were mentioning earlier, which comes through, many religions and read and write alphabets and, all these different psychological tactics through images mainly. And so what happens when you are indoctrinated, so to speak, or educated with these read and write alphabet languages that, how do they influence you?
Well, if you strip it all back, it comes back to the distinction between happy, bright thoughts which raise up and float and bounce off everything in the dream of life, and heavy, dense thoughts which are dark and harm-doing, which sink down. So,
and you could describe that as being, in an emotional sense.
Food, when you go to McDonald's, when you eat animals, when you eat heavy protein foods that have been processed, when you eat all the carbohydrates, where all the life force have been stripped out of them and remanufactured with chemicals and poisons and genetically modified, all that intentionality has no gift of love in it. There's no consciousness in that thinking. So all that just drops down. It bogs you down. Many people, when you eat, you start feeling really tired after a big meal of meat and potatoes, or a big serving and pasta or whatever it is, processed when you're heating and cooking food. The thing to remember that nature, life, the dream of life, is information. When you go to nature and you change that information by heating it and processing it and cooking it, you are altering that information. You're actually removing the life force of living creator out of those life forms. And now it no longer has that life force energy. And that becomes the heavy, dense energy, that intentionality. What it's demonstrating is that we are unconscious of our actions in harming what does live, to turn those things into something that's now dead, because we've cooked it now and we've killed it and processed it. And that is all poison. Eating meat is actually toxic, highly toxic. When you heat food, it becomes highly toxic. It's toxic because the information is no longer a gift of life. When we co-create the dream of life, we have happy, bright thoughts. These thoughts raise up, and all the birds will sing it. It carries in the wind. Everything in the dream of life benefits from those happy, bright thoughts. That's why we're plant eaters. We were never meat eaters. They've lied about all this. We're not dairy food eaters either. We don't need it. We're supposed to just go to nature and eat the fruits. We're not supposed to kill the labourers who are producing the fruits and the nuts and the seeds and the berries, etc. Now, there is so much living information, living food in the proteins, but because we've compromised nature, the synergy of nature, because everything's synergistic, we now have to fight for vitamin B12 supplements and calcium supplements and this supplement and that supplement. But that's actually wrong as well.
Although they might be necessary in some cases at this point.
I still think it shocks the body and the body can't store it properly. It creates other problems. What we got to do is start getting back on the land, and together with many of us start growing food together as fast as we can, putting seeds in our tongue, giving through our saliva information to the seeds about our diseased state of our bodies, planting those seeds in the soil, washing our bodies over those seeds, giving it with whatever we can use that doesn't toxify the soil, give the soil more information about our diseased state, and through our attention, our thoughts of happy, bright thoughts. The fruits that we grow, the vegetables we grow, and we eat that information raises us up. It's bouncing back, and we starts to heal all that distortion that's brought us down and weighed us down and distorted us, all that DNA that's been so badly distorted. We're now recorrecting it. Now, by doing it synergistically, when we start pooing and weeing in our own gardens again, because we're pooing and weeing natural, non-toxic water and solids, when we start doing it, and our children are playing in these little pieces of land that we call our kindoms and kindomains, all their thoughts resonate through the trees and their grass, all their joy and their laughter, all our thoughts, all the friends that come and visit, and as we go and help each other's gardens, help each other's homes and work together, which is explained in the 10 Steps of Kingdom, which will be another video we'll talk about. But all that intentionality resonates in the soil, resonates with the insects. We're giving purpose to everything.
And that's
where you get your B12 problem fixed.
And that's why farming and agriculture doesn't really work, because when there's stressed farmers that are working, under severe pressure, and we're basically, and we don't know what intention is going into this food that they're growing, that's being mass produced, and a lot of it now is being produced in unnatural ways, as in it's being forced to grow faster, and then we eat this food, and that and the intention that's going into this food, if that's to make for financial gain, or if it's stress related in any way, we're eating this food, and it compromises us severely, because we're not those plants aren't responding to us and what we need, because it's all being produced by one big industry or a few big industries or whatever that's been sent out. This food has been sent out to everyone, or it goes to supermarkets or whatever, and then we buy it. But the food's compromised.
I mean, and how long it's been picked and then taken 3 or 4 days to get to you, at least 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
I mean,
more than that by the time
it's already started decaying, isn't it?
All the farmers are growing all this food. They don't think about you. You're not in their thoughts.
Yeah.
You see, the food that's truly beneficial to you is the food grown by those of your community and your tribe who actually have you in their thoughts. They're thinking about you and they love you. That food is as beneficial as the food that you're growing. And the food that you grow is beneficial to them. When you're part of a kingdom or a kindomain, whether it's 300, 500, 1,000 of us, long as that intention there from all of us is for that, and everything we're creating is a gift for our tribe, everything we're creating is a benefit, not just to everything of nature, but we are also nature as well. Man is nature. It's beneficial to us. But when you start looking at the system the way it is today, where the farmers are producing food, no matter what they're doing in the system to produce it, there's no, our thoughts about us, their thoughts about us aren't there in what they're doing. By the time you put it on the truck and it's transported, as you said, and as it arrives in the shop, it can be weeks before we actually see this food. There's literally no life force energy in the food.
And the quality is becoming more and more degrading.
All right, I've got a question. All right, say we create the kindoms and we create these domains that we're talking about, and we all start to live uniquely within the our own thoughts, and we don't start representing the thoughts of others through read and write alphabet and things like that. How would we be able to communicate if we don't have a language?
Well, we used to be able to communicate through sense. Our true gift is this, that our power of thought, we can contemplate on anywhere in the dream of life, and we actually can shift our consciousness there. We can call it telepathy. Some of us, if we really know how to do it, we can decompose and recompose our bodies as well, down to the molecular level of our DNA.
Have you ever met anybody?
Someone came to me like that once, one of a traditional man on the land. He brought his whole body to me. In fact, it happened twice. In 2006, an American Indian also did it as well. And that's another story for another time. That blew me away, especially when the American Indian and the Aboriginal man together came the third
How can
time.
anybody believe what you're saying?
Don't have to believe anything I'm saying. Don't believe anything I'm saying. I'm just saying that was my experience. And I could touch them, smell them, feel them, just like us now. Like I could touch Hannah right now. Same thing. You can go.
So our language is sense. So you're saying our
Not this talk.
traditional language is sense.
That's our true language.
And how would we communicate then? And how do the trees and how does everything in relationship come back to that?
It's all done through consciousness, which is through sense. Because our thought, when we're contemplating on something, we're directing our information to that tree or to that plant. The plant is also doing it with us. They live for us, live for man. Without us, they've got no purpose anymore. And that's what's happened. We've uprooted ourselves out of the dream of life to the point where all of nature has been abandoned. And basically the animals and most of the creatures have had to sort of, in a way, survive because they're not on their own. Without us, we've become hostile to them. They're not hostile to us. The reason why we get attacked by sharks and get eaten by big wild game animals is because they sense the distortion. Their job is to transmute the distortion to maintain perfection. We're supposed to maintain perfection. Anything in the dream of life, when it wavers from that perfection, another life form comes to transmute that imperfection, to maintain perfection. And that's how it's always been. It's not about evolution and survival of the fittest and dog eat dog. This is all nonsense garbage.
And when you think about, with sharks and, for example, like you were saying, think about how when we're younger, sharks are one of the animals that we're pretty much taught to be fearful of. When in school and through TV and through books and whatever images. Sharks are one of those big, creatures of the sea that, have got big teeth and, they're presented to us in a way that, is made to be scary. And then so we all think these scary, we have these scary sort of feelings or, we think these scary sort of images about sharks, but then, they attack us. And
because we created that, you see, because our thinking is impure. And because our thoughts are impure, the animals sense that as well, and they have to transmute that distortion.
How does there become an impure thought, if man is...
Because it's not a gift of life in the thought that we're thinking. It's not beneficial to the dream. And all the creatures that sense that, their job is to maintain the perfection, so they actually will go, a crocodile will come and eat you. The bear will come out of the woods and come and get you. And we've created it. The bear, there's no animal in the world that intentionally comes to attack us. We have to teach them to do it. Either intentionally by training them or by our impure, insincere thoughts and feelings. But, there are people in the world who can actually swim among sharks all their lives and they treat them no different to their pet dogs. And the sharks will never hurt them. Sharks will never touch them. There are people living with animals, wild animals, that are not wild at all. They just haven't been brought up in nature, but they sense the pure and sincere thoughts of those that have become their friends.
Because that's fundamentally different from somebody, raising, let's say, a wild animal like a tiger or something in captivity, actually meeting a wild tiger, so to speak, and then befriending it, and which I've personally met somebody also in a forest in Laos. But there is something completely different about actually coming across a wild animal that can sense your intention in such a way and not be attacked by it or not, fall prey to it or be afraid of it yourself and etc. There's something that separates that, and what is it that separates that? Is that just the information of life, the thoughts?
Everything bounces back in the image of our projection. Everything happened to us, all of us, because we're all man. The conscious of man is all of us. We're all responsible. What I put into the pool of consciousness affects the whole pool of consciousness of all of man. Every thought out there of every man, it affects all of us. We're all responsible for this. We've all collectively have got to return to having pure and sincere thoughts so that the gift of our thinking is beneficial, raises up the consciousness of this dream again, where even all the animals rejoice with us in the beauty of life.
What is a pure and sincere thought?
A thought that does no harm to another living thing at all, where we do no harm, where we want to work with that life form and work with it without changing and altering, where we honour its uniqueness. Every grain of sand is unique. We have to honour the uniqueness of every grain of sand, yet alone every bird, every raindrop. We have to honour the uniqueness of everything.
Couldn't you say then that we are a whole organism, and within that whole organism, if it's just, so to speak, one thing, isn't it then not unique? Isn't there no uniqueness?
Because the uniqueness comes from the fact that each of us has the responsibility to care for the dream, for the life, and because we've been brought up by nature, the sensations each of us form from each of us observing nature, and no one else telling us how to think and feel. about what we're observing, forms that uniqueness. So
It was as before. Also, you explained this actually the difference between whole and one. You know, there is nothing.
That's where I think that's the difference. Is the thing is not to invalidate another man. We shouldn't be telling our children how to think and feel. No, Fiona and I have made this mistake over and over again because that's been part of the customisation of the way Mum and Dad brought us up, and the way and everyone else around us are brought up like this, and the having to wean ourselves out of that kind of thinking and attitude and start to reinvent our lives, where we start to protect our children, allow them to have their unique thoughts. Now, at the moment, we're so compromised because even the powers that be that control DOCS, which is the organisations here in New South Wales to do with controlling children under the state government and the federal government.
I like those big puppet hands, by the way.
Yeah, all these big puppet hands. You know, they would love to come and raid families like us and say that we are irresponsible, that we don't care for our children, and that they need to take us away and then put them into homes where our strangers have to care for them, etc. like that, you know. So, look, most of you will be watching this video will be fully aware of all this kind of nonsense going on. We have got to take responsibility for our lives. It starts here on the land. It is man on the land. There's an article that we posted on the website. I'll provide the link to this and you can read about this very thing. Because it tells you that while we take responsibility for being man on the land, we have our true freedom, we have our true power, and we then can, through the produce of what we're creating on that land, we can share that as gifts to the rest of our tribe. And that's what we should all be doing. Instead of and we don't need to barter. Barter is part of the problem. We don't need to barter. We don't own anything. If we all just live as a gift and we give to the community as a gift, we're all doing it, we're all taken care of. We all get the best of everything anyway.
It's about really realizing, I think, that we don't. It's exactly what you're saying. It's that we can't own anything. We can't own anyone. We can't own an animal. We can't own a plant.
Well, we die if we do. We start falling.
Which
We can't even own your last breath. You may try to own your breath. Oh God, let it go. You're gonna die. You know.
I think this is
That's what happens to belief systems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where it comes into, you know, people struggling with letting go of certain feelings and thoughts and stories and all this kind of stuff, which, you know, we've been going through lately, is that it's the same deal. People, you know, we've been taught to hold on to our feelings and all of this baggage. It's like a lot of us, you know, we struggle to let go of it because it's this whole thing of we've got to hold on to everything. You know, we don't have enough money. We've got to hold on to all of it so we don't lose anything.
We don't have freedom
anymore.
anymore.
Exactly, and it's this
We're not
mind game
able to
or this brain control that just controls this in so many different areas that I think we're, you know, a lot of people aren't really aware of.
What would you say to somebody then that will come along and tell you about some of the advancements of science or the advancements of even, you know, particular religions or something like that, and say, oh, are you proposing that we give up 200 years or however many years of scientific advancements to go back to a, you know, caveman
The
life?
progress of civilization, which they glorify so much, and you can see it in the Olympic Games and all the things where they celebrate, that progress of civilization is the progress of our spiritual suicide. That's really what's going on here. We're actually decimating and destroying everything. The thing, it all comes back to the fact that we're not supposed to be doing harm to anything in the dream of life. If each of us takes responsibility to care for each other, and we don't want to do harm because we're conscious of that, because we don't want to hurt another man or woman intentionally. Even if we're still waking up, we're unconscious. It all comes back to just taking, we're saying it over and over again, taking responsibility. Just to take responsibility.
I think if people really knew, if everyone really knew what they were doing, what it was really contributing to, then everyone would just...
Well, what about someone in science...
Stop all the harm that they're doing, because no one really wants to harm life.
Let's say, for instance, has been able to get a prosthetic leg, or, you know, how can you say that, you know, science does nothing for man or something?
We have the ability to regrow everything. Yeah. You know, all our cells have unlimited
It's exactly that,
potential.
A prosthetic.
We are so in a dumbed down nonsense state. We can't actually regenerate our cells. In a state of sense and through consciousness, we can regenerate every cell in our body. We can access the DNA and instruct the DNA to reconstruct our organs and glands in our bodies. We all have this power. That's how man was created. The very thing that created man is the very thing we can regrow everything in our body. But we are so compromised that to witness this in this life would be pretty amazing. I'd love to be able to see this happen, but probably our children or our children's children will be able to do this again. We all have this gift. The other thing about science, I'd say to this, anyone who comes along that want to propose that there's some benefit to science, I keep asking this question. Show me the evidence that what you're promoting provides and guarantees to provide freedom, truth, joy, abundance, and do no harm for all of life without the need for slaves or rulers and without causing loss of uniqueness. If you can demonstrate that what you're doing in science does that, I'll jump for it.
So does Kingdom, or what we're proposing to do, create abundance?
Yes.
Yeah. How does it create abundance compared to what science is trying to do with technology in order to further,
Free us.
further
Well, the more
free
our
us,
lives are freed
so
up
to
from being
speak?
slaves to the system, and more when we stop having to represent belief systems and having faith to all this nonsense, when we're actually freed up to be man in the moment, and we're raw food, living food eaters again, what happens here? We actually eat like that much food a day. That's all we need, because the life force energy is so intense.
These are just what you propose, so to speak.
This is where we will end up again, and what will happen? Every breath of air, because when this dream of life was created, as it was unfolding, the air was so pure. Every breath was like life. The pollen in the air was so rich, and the life force energy was so intense that we were breathing life.
What would you describe life force energy as?
Life force energy is the consciousness of the life of man that we are, the living creator. That life is that consciousness, is that energy, or life force energy people talk about. It's life. That life is man. That's the life of the man that you are, the life that Hannah is, the life of the man that I am, the life that Fiona is and the children, the life of every man, the life of the tree, the life of the grass, and everything that lives and growing, that takes responsibility for its life.
So
that is what we are.
Continue on about how we are creating abundance using the natural system, if you will call it, of creation.
That is nature. Well, we'll end up with so much abundance because we don't need to eat all this food anymore. The whole of Earth was a living food forest with its valleys and plains. Everything was. The great thing about the dream of life.
What about
was
shelter?
everything's already provided by nature. If we want to, we used to live with the animals. We didn't live in houses like this. But we can still do all that. We've got to learn to make houses again, if we want to, that do no harm. Now that's the challenge. Do no harm. Do no harm.
Because a lot of the houses actually, even today, majority of the people are so bitten, so to speak, by the elements when they walk out, because they're conditioned. They're living within their heaters and their air conditioners and the like. There's people that I've read about, haven't personally met, but that can actually sleep within a forest without need for any
all the tribes
protection. Actually, I lied then. I met the same people that sort of came across the wild tigers in Laos. They lived without any heaters or air conditioners.
We don't need it.
Or they were climatized, so to speak.
That's part of our slave status. That's part of our dumbed down, fallen man state. When we return to raw food, living food, and we're breathing, drinking, and eating consciousness, and we're releasing consciousness, and there's no corruption to the DNA at any way from being the child growing to the older man that we become. When that returns to that pure state, our bodies, and I've read about this, and I must point out, I did raw fooding for 19 months straight. I was very strict, and I noticed how much my body. I actually lost all the rest of my weight until I lapsed back and went into mini cooked food again, and my body changed again very quickly, and I started getting sick, and things happened to me. So I've
taken by the dark side.
You can call it that, but I actually did this as a guinea pig. I used myself as a guinea pig. I wanted to be sure about this stuff and test it through walk to talk, and I found that when I raw fooded for 19 months straight, my thinking accelerated, my joy accelerated. I found myself having more energy every day. I didn't have the tiredness anymore. I could operate on 3 or 4 or 5 hours sleep, and I didn't know what it was to wake up feeling tired. I wasn't grumpy. I found that I was eating less food, and generally I became a benefit to my family. I wasn't draining from my family by being grumpy and unhappy and feeling stressed out and worrying about mortgages and paying my bills and paying taxes, because I pulled out of the system. So I was actually raw fooding while I did this, and I noticed this massive change in me. Even though it was only a subtle change, it showed me the window into the full potential of what we can be again.
Do you think as well pulling out of the system contributed to that as well?
Yeah.
To your,
Yeah. But that's because of others like you and Andy and and Fiona and friends like Bruno and many others who keep sending us fictional dollars to support us as a family. So I keep doing it.
Because what you're saying is basically transitional, you know.
It's a transition. Yeah.
Because people, say for instance in colder climates and things like that, if they were all to up and leave their homes or up and get out of the system, most of them would just die and wither away because they wouldn't be able to handle it.
Exactly, and this is why with the Kingdom, Kingdom will be a living example, will be a living workshop, it'll be a living demonstration where we're all walking the talk as we're growing food, as we're helping each other, healing each other of all the diseases that we've been plagued with. The thing is this, is that when you're really raw food and you're bringing life into your body again, because we're actually eating life in its purest form, which is means that everything's compacted consciousness. Instead of destroying it through all the terrible waters that we're still doing it now with the water we're using at the moment. But when we actually return to true consciousness and we're living raw food eaters, we no longer need heaters. We don't need air conditioning because our body is generally warmer in winter time, our body's a lot cooler in summertime and generally a lot warmer in winter time. And you'll find that our body no longer has any addiction to fiction. No, we don't have any addiction to any prosthetics anymore because we're actually doing it. We're taking responsibility for doing it in our body. Because at the moment we need the physical fiction as the heater to provide us the heat that our body's not generating anymore. We need the air conditioning prosthetics to give us the coolness that our body's not doing anymore. And we're not in an environment anymore which does it. You know, so you amplify that into every area of the system. We are so compromised by this fiction. So we can't just not talk about changing it by walking away from the system. We've got to change by walking away from all the belief systems and all the habits that tie us to the system as well.
So how is the concept of a dream of life not a belief system?
Because I don't have to represent it. It lives by me walking the talk. You know, I'm not a fiction. Someone can come and touch me. You can come and touch me now, and you know that I live. I'm not a fiction. You can touch me. You can feel me. I'm real. So,
but I can still touch that barbecue over there.
Yeah, you can still. Well, the difference is that barbecue can't do anything for you without you doing it. You've got to do everything for it.
Yeah, I've got to turn it on. I've got to wheel it. I've got to.
And even though that's the remains of, Fiona used to eat a lot of meat before we woke up and stopped eating meat years ago. And at this stage, it's still sitting and wondering what we can do with this to recycle it, because it needs to be recycled. So we'll come to that. If you have any ideas out there, you want to know what we can do with it. We've got 3 barbecues floating around because this here is the remains of 2 houses in one now, because the family home was stolen, which you can read about on the website. But
we don't use that barbecue.
So we just want to recycle. We're as Andrew said, we're in a transitionary state, and we're going to use all the dead things to get out of the fiction. We're going to use the fiction to get out of the fiction and return to paradise. Take responsibility for the harm that we've caused, and through intentionality, being clear on the vision that the purpose is that our children, and as we become older, that we are walking away from the system so we don't have to support the system anymore that chops the trees down, that kills the animals, that provides the chemicals that poison the lands and the air and the water. Because we'll take care of the water that's on the lands. And all of us are doing, we care for the rivers and the streams that pass through all those lands. And when we're all connecting together as tribes to each other again, there'll be no more poison rivers anymore. We won't need money, because wherever we go, we're going to meet our brothers and sisters who are going to welcome us with love and share their abundance with us. And we'll travel with our abundance and share with them. There's no such thing as hoarding to sit there and negotiate through commerce and barter. We don't need to do this anymore.
So what would then happen to, you know, the desert areas and the ice areas? And
we'll recreate food forests out of them. We're already doing it now through permaculture. The Dead Seas is living examples through permaculture. And those videos are plenty abundant. Do some Googling for
4,000-year-old
Jeff Lawson and Bill Mollison.
There are some deserts where they're building forests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, that suggests then that, you know, the organism of, you know, what we'll dub Earth for now has its own immune system or something of the like.
Well, we are that immune system if we don't harm it. We actually can protect the harm. We can stop it. But we have to stand up to the harm and stop everyone else from harming it. And start confronting everything, because the harm to the forests in Brazil is harm to us here right now. The air that's been generated by those forests and the water is the water we're breathing and drinking, breathing here and drinking here, etc. You know, the men and women who think happy thoughts there benefits my children here. My happy thoughts are going to benefit those tribes that are in the wilderness we've never seen, but through sense we actually can communicate with each other again. We actually can learn to do all this. We do not need telecommunications. Our body can already do it. Our brain has all that ability. We do not need aeroplanes. Our body can do it. I mean, this is stuff that, you know, that may scare a lot of people off. Not so much our work, but people don't realise that the Earth was enveloped by a water canopy. And that water canopy was all the information of our ancestors, the building up of water. And through the technology that was developed long ago, through our ancestors, they busted the water canopy, they burst it. And all the water came down from what we call great heights, the ionosphere, the stratosphere, the atmosphere. It came down like baseballs and footballs by the time it hit the Earth. It was smashed and devastated most of the Earth. And it filled all the lowlands, which is now what we call the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean. All these areas where all these waters are were once the lowlands. And the lower the lands we were, where the oxygen was more pressurized, it was more intense. We were breathing more pure oxygen. Now we're living on higher lands because we've decimated the water canopy. Now it's gone. And that's, even though we're trying to recreate it, they keep putting the satellites up there. They keep putting the aeroplanes through it and all the rocket ships to keep busting, keep it maintained, keep puncturing it. So we don't allow it to reheal. We're actually damaging it.
You see evidence of these types of civilizations?
Well, all the big animals were our mates. Our ancestors were, at least, back before we busted the water can, our ancestors were a minimum 14 foot tall. Probably up to 30-something feet.
What was the, who are you referencing at the moment?
Well,
You said this wasn't...
all the evidence we found through the archaeologists who've have the guts to come out in the open and demonstrate. When I was a young guy, I used to go to the Theosophical Society back in the early 70s, mid 70s. I used to read these books. These books were more easily available. They were uncovering physical bodies across Earth. Bodies well beyond 14 foot. They're lying about this Anunnaki and alien technology and all this stuff. These are our ancestors. And anything that didn't look like a man was genetically modified by us. Because we created Cyclops and we created all the weird things.
What about the reptilians?
We created them as well if they existed. We created everything. We're responsible for everything. We're just been deceived to think that something else out there's been doing it to us. We've done everything.
And that's why we do nothing.
Exactly, because we passed the buck. Take responsibility. Stop blaming. Stop waiting for the Galactic Federation to come down. Stop waiting for this point that you think they're going to come and help you. Stop waiting for Nasara to come forward with all its fictional dollars. Stop waiting for Jesus, the Messiah, or the prophet, or some great man is going to suddenly appear and come along with a magic wand and just going to make it all right and tell you that all the harm you've all done, you don't have to worry about it. Sit back, relax. Go get yourself an esky. Fill it up with ice and your beer. Get yourself some potato chips. Sit in front of the TV and relax. It's all been taken care of. Don't worry. It's all right. Well, we don't see life like that. We're going to take matters into our own hands, take responsibility, and start spreading that out. If we can create peace all around us, create love and joy and abundance, and do no harm all around us by all the men and women who live all around us, then we live in kingdom. We live in paradise. If we maintain this individual state, where everyone's fighting and living for their own, each one's locked behind these little fences. Look at these fences. You know how we barricading. Hey, you know, our neighbours. You know, we're just locking ourselves out from each other. We're supposed to be partners of life. We've got to stop this. We've got to stop this nonsense.
Arthur, there are people that feel or think that they can't really do anything without everyone else getting involved. You know, some people feel like, oh, well, I can't do anything.
Well, they're still passing the buck. It's an excuse, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, that's not true because, like you were saying before, with pure and sincere thoughts, your pure and sincere thoughts affect, you know, people on the other side of the earth, or you know, other families, or you know, me and Andy.
Exactly.
And so really,
we're creating the dream, aren't we?
We're creating the dream.
And attracting man to the dream to create the dream.
But we don't need, you know, like we can still, on our own, although we, you know, ultimately we want, you know, we want everyone, obviously. We want
everyone to win.
Everyone to win.
Win-win for everyone.
But we can still make a difference on our own, just through our own thoughts, our own pure and sincere thoughts.
It all comes back to what do we choose to have the world we live in. Do we want to live in the system? If it is, then you live on limited liability. You no longer take full responsibility for your life. You're a ward of the state. And
what is limited liability, just for those that
limited
might
liability means
understand?
that other people will tell you how to think and feel, provide you with laws. They'll call it a society, laws of the society, the civilian laws. And basically, you are ruled by a tiny few because they can control and manipulate it through remote control, remote projection, remote viewing. They can manipulate through suggestibility. They have their plants in every area, every private corporation, every political party. They all have their controlling forces and elements. And basically, we are living under the standing of other men and women who are telling us how to think and feel.
Does that mean they've taken full responsibility for telling you that?
But we've given our lives to them to rule us, but they won't take any responsibility for the harm they're causing either.
So that means everything's a system of limited liability, and there's no one taking any responsibility.
It's chaos for you.
For any of the harm done to, whether it be your financial situation, the planet, yada yada yada.
Well, I wouldn't say Earth's the planet, but I would say that that Earth is being decimated because no one's taking responsibility. They're waiting around for someone else to fix it. In the meantime, they're still consuming it. I just find that so outrageous. It's so ridiculous that we're doing it. I'm just as responsible as everyone else. I've had to stop it. We've got to do something about it. So I'm not waiting around for someone else to fix something before I actually get started. There's no point starting a revolution. We get 100,000 people to start marching the streets like we're doing in Wall Street and other countries in the world if they're all going to fall into another system.
Well, not just that. Most of them are going there to focus the blame on something, to actually blame someone and not take responsibility again.
There's no need to go on the streets. Well, all we do, we pull out of the system. We don't need to go on the streets. I used to think that was the way to go. No, we just pull out. We start creating communities together. Withdraw, boycott, withdraw from the system. Stop giving it your energy. Give your energy to the dream of life, to Kingdom. Start creating every other man and woman and child who wants to live like that. Take responsibility for that. Start doing it. Don't waiting around for them to do it for you.
And you've got to be realistic about, how much energy you can afford, so to speak, to pull out of the system at this point, because we're, compromised and there are so few of us creating kingdoms and things like that. And it's not about feeling guilty for, not being able to control having to support particular industries or things like that at the moment, if your intentions are on getting out of it and putting it towards creating kingdom and things like that.
Well, it's a distrust. People are living under distrust because they've learnt to survive as an individual. And while you're like that, it's very hard to come together in wholeness where we actually start living for each other again. We've got to break those spells because they are spells. They are belief systems that rule us. What do
you mean by a spell? How would you explain a spell?
A spell is a belief system that you start to worship. It's information that you're giving it power, which rules you. You start to be ruled by that information, which dictates to you.
Casts an influence, so to speak.
It influences, it shapes and molds your life. And because the information inside it is about distrust, and we work like herds, and we say, I'm part of the punk rock herd, and Joe Blow's part of the gothic herd, and up there is the Protestant herd, and over there is the Catholic herd, and over here is the Greek Orthodox herd, and over here is the science herd. And everyone's got their own different things. Now, that's not uniqueness there. These are system molds. Everyone's been manufactured out of the molds, out of the sameness molds of the system. So, well, let me finish. What I'm getting at here is that we're in a transition situation here to return to paradise. The way out of it is a team effort. If we all help each other, hundreds of us come together and start helping each other, the manpower and the energy of all of us together provides us with, it amplifies back more than 1,000-fold for all of us. Look, when two people love each other, the energy bouncing back from two of us comes back to each of us twice, right? The love I have for you, Andy, the love you have for me, that love bounces back to us twice to each of us. It's amplified. Get 10 of us doing it for each other. It amplifies back 100 times to each of us. Get 100 of us. It's amplifying well beyond 1,000. Do you imagine when the intention is to serve each other and we live for each other, the transition becomes faster and easier when we're no longer having thoughts of distrust and folding onto greed and so, my money, my bank account, you can't have it. I must have my piece of land, my piece of paradise. You can't have paradise when it's mine.
I suppose you could say that with the love bouncing back, and a good example would be, I think most of the people watching this would have woken up hungover once or twice, gone into their job and had to slave away for hours and been grumpy almost all day, and then someone nice comes in and throws them one smile and gives them one of their pure intentions, so to speak, about them, and it changes everything. I know myself that I've been through something like that.
You can break the ice in a room full of a lot of upset people by just one joke.
That's it.
And particularly when it's very sincere. But the thing is, we actually can solve all these problems with our intention. Now, Fee and I, and you and Hannah, the four of us, we're committed to this. There's no back door. We have no excuse. So if you want to come and join. Not join us as in a group. You know, if you've got a piece of land that we can get the Southern Highlands to get a kingdom off the ground, or you've got fictional dollars still going while the system's still running to allow you to sell what you've got to get your fictional dollars, make it happen. Put it as a gift, because kingdom is a gift. The way out of this mess is through gifts. It's through love. Love is a gift. Life is a gift. Love is life. Life is love. They're one and the same word, same meaning. It's life. We just got to give life to the dream of life. To do that is like the sun radiating out. It's life. You can't own those rays that you've created. It's my information. It's my idea. It's mine. It's mine. If the sun did that, if everything of nature was to do that, everything would die. Because you imagine the sun, the rays would turn back on itself. It would own it. It would turn that into a black hole. There'd be no consciousness there. Where once there was the radiation of light, is now nothing. That's what's become of us sitting inside our living rooms watching television when we go to work. We're all self-centered. We're surviving the bank accounts and the fictions we're representing, the ties to the mortgages you have to pay and the taxes that you have to pay and the fears you have and the consequences of the penalties and fines by the trillion statutes that are coming all at us, because we're breaking the law every moment. Every moment we're breaking the law now. You can't even make a step without breaking the law now. That's how absurd the whole thing is. So it all comes back to seeing life as a gift. When we can let go of the me, I, which is the little Mary representing Alice in Wonderland, when we can give up representing the name, in this case Arthur, and having to fend for Arthur. And now it's about man, and Arthur is man, and man is you, and you're man, and Andy is man. But man also is the tree, and we're the air, and we are the wind, and we are all of consciousness, we are the living dream. It's about what we do for life. We create life. We have the gift of life. We release that life for the benefit of life as the sun releases its rays back to us. If the sun didn't do it, it would die. If we don't do it, we die. We die into religion. We die through religion. We die through science. We die through all the man-made constructs of politics. We're dying. We look grey. We age. We wrinkle too fast. You know, we never used to have wrinkles. We didn't have scoliosis in our bones. We didn't have cancer. We didn't have Parkinson's and Hodgkin's disease and all the other brain diseases. We didn't have all the acid imbalances in our body. We didn't have all these things. You know, this is all the byproduct of our distortion. What we've done to nature bouncing back at us in a distorted manner. Our children are sick because we're sick. We're sick because our parents were sick. And the sickness started when our ancestors became sick. Sick in pure and sincere thoughts. When we stop that, we fix it there, we start to change everything. It's like, why don't you come, let's all get together. There's 1,000 of us. Let's get on with this. Don't be scared of these people.
I just got a quick question. When you talk about spells, spells and sorcery, do you mean like, you know, like a witch, or you know how Hollywood sort of paints spells and sorcery, or
every letter of the English language has a meaning. But the meaning wasn't taught to us at school. Those meanings, they're symbols. So like, if you look at Egyptian hieroglyphics, each symbol has a story to it, has information, right? Same as the English language, every letter has information. But they don't teach you that information. They kept that to themselves, the people behind the Freemasonic world who know the truth about all this. They use the symbols to communicate with each other. We don't know those symbols. So we don't know how to communicate the information. So when they're talking to each other, we don't know how to recognize the information that they're using. All their architecture are symbols. All their artwork are symbols. Their music, all the classical music up till today, all mathematical scored, are symbols. It has information. It's all satanic. It is not life sustainable, this information. So what was happened to us? We were taught to spell, meaning we were taught to memorize ABC. 1, 2, 3. And in learning to memorize these letters, we also learn to form words. By forming the incantations, each letter is an incantation. We bring them together to form the sounds of the meanings of the words they taught us at school, and through our parents. So on one hand, we're projecting information that is language, that's English language, or whatever alphabet language we're using to communicate with each other, which we're doing right now, we're using this talk. But then there's also the symbolism of the letters we're sounding through our sounds in our mouths, which are casting spells. This is why they taught us to spell, to put us under the spell. we fell under the meanings of the words we believe in. And because we believe in government, we allow ourselves to be ruled by men. Because that's what government means. When democracy, the democ race, when we believe in democracy, we're actually saying we're being being democked. You know, when you look at constitution, you've been stitched up by the constitution. Contract, it's the tract of the con. Now these are symbols inside these words. These are spells. So we're actually ruled by the spells of these letters.
So it'd be simple to say
But we're
that,
not conscious of it.
that spells and sorcery is simple sounds
magic.
and imagery.
Yeah, exactly. It's just all imagery.
You know? There's nothing mystical about it.
Nothing mystical.
It's just sound and imagery.
Exactly. And we've fallen into those images. But we're not conscious of the effect that they have on us. Because if we were, we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't allow our children to go to school and be brainwashed anymore. So we've got to stop it. So that's the true issue of spell. We are under a spell. That's why people feel powerless to do anything, because they're under a spell. If they weren't under a spell, they'd be standing under full liability, under full responsibility, taking action for everything they think, feel and do.
So there's only one way to break the spell, and that's taking full responsibility and creating kingdoms of love, where everything's a gift of life.
Yeah. I start to live for you, Andy. My life is for you now. What I do is to benefit you. If you do that for me, and Hannah does it for us, and Fiona does it for us, and hundreds of us doing it for each other.
Say hello, Fiona.
Hello.
We have paradise. That's Francis. This is Xanthi.
This is a part of paradise, yeah.
Yes, we create paradise. Paradise is in our thinking. We just have to take responsibility and hold those thoughts in focus and keep putting our life force energy into that intention, through that intention. Keep it in focus. Don't let yourself drift back into the system where the system is your focus, and that it becomes your ruler, and that it becomes your God, your false God.
If the system is the image you're thinking, which it always will be, because it's the sounds have been there to craft that image, then you'll always create the system, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to think, say, images of love, pure and sincere thoughts that have an image connected to them would be a very powerful place to start.
Yeah, exactly. We explained this in the video that I released a few days ago about the Dream of Life Part 1. And if you can watch it, you can find it on the YouTube channel. We'll provide the link to this video there. We explain this, about this very thing, and how that the science only exists for the system. But the religions, all the religions and all the philosophies only exist for the system. If there was no system, none of these would exist either. Right? They're all designed to give us to get us to give our power away, to give our life away. So we can't take responsibility. Because see, while we're not taking responsibility, we need a God to take responsibility for our lives. And that means other men and women can start ruling us, because they'll act as the representatives of that God, of that philosophy, of that religion, with all that information. That's why I said in that video how they taught us through Christianity there's a hierarchy of archangels to cherubs, so that we can learn to become familiarized with the hierarchy of the powers that be that rule us on earth. And this is as above, so below. This is duality. This is the scam. And you can see this in all its forms when you actually stop and concentrate on this and look at how they've done this. This is what they do. They hit you with spells so they can rule you. They are the master puppeteers pulling at the strings of belief. You've been manipulated by them. They control you because you are still attached by the string of your belief, the string of belief to them. So you give your power to them, they can control you remotely. And that's black magic in its worst form. That's what's happened to...
And it's really that simple, isn't it? It's nothing mystical.
Nothing mystical. We're all marionettes pulled by these master puppeteers, giving our power away to them so that we create their world in their image. Got to stop doing it. They can't bring forward a God. All they can bring forward is another man. We keep asking them, please bring forward God to back your claim. They can't bring forward God, because this God doesn't exist, it's invisible. Where is it? We're talking about a living creator here. Something that has substance. It's alive. Why would it hide from us? Why is it invisible? Why is it a mystery? It's because it's Freemasonic, it's satanic.
You mean to say that a tree wouldn't just play hide and seek? like the information of the system, so to speak, does.
I wouldn't do it to my children. Why would Fiona and I play hide and seek to our children? We put up a wall and our children on the other side and we're here and they can never get access to us anymore. How would they feel growing up like that? They lost connection to us. Do you think that the Creator would do that to us as well? It's nonsense. This is ridiculous. The whole thing's a scam. To give our responsibility away through these nonsense religions so that the tiny few men and women who control it have all the power. All these priests, the Levite priests who control the Roman cult, which is within the Jesuit world, which controls the Roman Catholic Church. All these priests, remember, all these lands, like this land we now call Australia, they were invaded, decimated the tribes. They zoned all the lands into parishes and put a church on every land. The Levite priests control both the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England. They control both sides. And every church has a priest on that parish. And that parish is there to deal with the sinners. Who are the sinners? They're all the men and women cursed under the spells of this nonsense. They're processing the curse. We'll explain this in another video. We'll get into this. That's what's really going on. They're acting as if they're gods. They can't bring forward a God to back their claim. The Pope can't do it. The Queen can't do it. None of them can do it. They're all scammers. Prince Philip's a scam. If you want to stop them, you think you're environmentally friendly? Well, how about get involved in Kingdom? Why don't you come forward and show that you demonstrate that we're all men, that all man is free, that no man has to be ruled by another man, that we don't need man-made laws to rule us. All we need is love. It's love, and our consciousness with love that determines all our actions to do no harm. What about that? What about you, William? Why don't you like to come forward? Why don't you come and join us if you're committed to a world of do no harm? What about any of you in the supposed aristocratic world? How about any of you would like to come forward and stand your ground and say that I'm no longer part of the system. I'm all for living for man's true freedom. Where are you all? All these people talk about goodness and benevolence and all these charities. When Fee and I woke up and we started doing it, they just disappeared. None of them were around anymore. Why are we treated like lepers to these people? Why do they just keep us apart and don't want to be near us anymore? We're very sincere in everything we're doing. We're committed to this. We just have no back door to creating a true world of peace. Where are they? Where are they? We have the remedy. We don't own it. But where are they? Doesn't it tell you clearly that there's another agenda going on here? And all the good people, the ones who are really waking up, don't get supported? Why is it that we've had 12 death threats to this family in the last 2 years? Why did they try to kill me 3 times in the last 19 months, 20 months or so? Last time with little Xanthi in the back seat of the car. Why are we such a danger? We're not Ned Kelly. We're not gay. We don't carry guns and weapons. We're harmless. We're totally non-violent, totally peaceful. Why are we such a threat?
Maybe we should leave people to think on